This class, we're going to do the walking tour a little bit. We're going to talk about research and group dynamics. Next week, we'll do strategy and tactics. We're going to skip the December 3rd because Scott's playing a tennis tournament. You might know that Scott was a professional tennis player, and his son going to do some father-son doubles. What that means is December 10th will be the last one before the big holiday. Obviously, we're missing Thanksgiving as well. And then what we'll do is we'll come back to the campaign plan on the 21st. And the 28th, we'll have our final session. Thought today what we would do is first we want to talk a little bit about this and invite you to this summit. And then we'll just walk through a couple different topics. We'll just have, obviously we'll keep it as an all group. And without any delay, Scott, why don't you just tell them about the first gathering, and I'll go pull that screen up.
Yeah, that sounds good. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was reading a document that came from a previous student campaign where they did a national summit. And they pulled it, this is actually after Katrina, and they pulled together, my students pulled together 38 colleges to have a dialogue about what to do post Katrina. And so that idea was in my head, and I was like, we should do the same thing for social action. Like, and I've dreamt about that for a while now, like to have a cross dialogue between the campuses where students are doing social action and doing campaigns, and to bring them together and to talk about their various campaigns. And do you want to bring that up? So we're going to do it this Sunday. We're calling it the National Social Action Summit, a National College Social Action Summit. I think it's going to be our eventual title, at 5 p.m. our time out on the West Coast, 8 to 9 on the East Coast. And just want to invite all of you to come to that, just to hear the students. I mean, there's not going to be too much of Bobby or me talking. It's really going to be the students talking about, do you have it up there?
Yep, there's the agenda, and then there's all these campaigns.
Yeah.
And these are the campaign posters. You can see them on the right here. We've gotten in so far. So 3 different schools.
So 3 different schools. Middlebury Institute of International Studies, which is here in Monterey. It's kind of one of their, outside of Middlebury back east, but it's a graduate student program. And what's interesting, that's coming out of economics. So that's the professors in economics. So that'll be that. I will do, of course, San Jose State will be, my class. And then College of New Jersey will be Miriam Shakow's class. And she's teaching it in anthropology, but in an environmental studies course. So you have 3 different 3 different disciplines. And then what's exciting also is that this is the beginning of, next semester, we'll have another 10 classes that are doing it in the spring. And then hopefully some of your classes will be added to that, where students can have this across. One, we're just gonna have them all do their organizational wrap like we always do in our classes. So they'll do a 1-minute organizational wrap, and then they'll be in smaller groups through divided up among the various schools to talk about the tactics and strategies they're using. So you can see it there, as well as their, what have been their greatest learning experiences, and a real chance for them to dialogue across their campaigns. And so we're hoping that really positive things come out of that. And then we'll do some type of follow-up to see how the campaigns end up, because we're still in the 2/3 of the semester through. So just want to invite all of you that the Zoom link is there.
The Zoom link's there. I also sent it out. I put it up on the website here. I didn't know the end time, so I'm going to put this back to 9 o'clock as opposed to 9.
Yeah, I think this is going to be
very good for me, because 9 o'clock's the limit.
So just want to invite all of you, and hopefully your students will be participating next semester or next year in this, because we're going to continually have it every fall and spring semester. So that's kind of an exciting thing for us that are doing it right now, and would love to have you all join us. So I thought just to start, this is kind of an overview of the day. Those are, really what's nice about how it's all designed now is that it's kind of the teaching is in the book. The teaching is when I'm speaking, right, in those 5 or 10 minute clips. So there's really no more of that where I teach. You can just see it on the video. And this is a time for us to talk and to share and to hear from each other and to get ideas from each other. So we have these 5 questions, and the first one being like, share and discuss your course plan and template. And in the future, we'll send this out in the very beginning. As Bobby and I said, shame on us for not getting that out in the very initial things. We thought about it a little bit later. So next semester, it'll be the first thing we hand out and say, please add to that and send it in to me and to Bobby, and we can look at that. One person's always done that, has already, I think it's Sue who's done it. So we've given ideas back, but we thought we'd just spend a little time here. Bobby, do they have a chance to share
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly what I should do. So has anybody else had a chance to look at that template? Great. So I'm gonna pull it up on the screen just so a few people can see it who haven't seen it before, just to give you the rundown. Oh, wrong item. So I pulled up the wrong one. Here it is. So the idea is just to have some place to begin to draft your syllabus. And I've never done a syllabus. I probably never will do a syllabus. So I just used the structure that Scott used in his class: outcomes, required text, readings, quizzes, those kinds of things. But the real meat of it starts here with the course schedule, where for each class, the date, the theme of that class, you may want to number it. That's the way Scott tracks it. The assignment for the students, that class, there may not be anything due, but I have it here just in case. And then this is really the thinking, right? This is how are you going to run the class? What presentation are you going to do? What discussions are you going to organize? Are you going to bring a guest speaker in or show any videos? And there's additional notes on the exercises or group work that's going to happen during the class. And Scott does that a lot. And this is just the same thing gets repeated class after class. So the idea is that you have a chance to kind of begin to put your thinking and then share that with, I like to see it just because I'm curious, but I can't really give you any good feedback. Scott certainly can. And I think what we saw even with Sue's got a very different kind of course, not specifically social action. It's sustainability issues related to, well, I'll let her talk about it. But then there's how would you integrate that into that 10-week course? That's what she's wrestling with. And you might have heard Courtney a minute ago talk about her class. It's a 3-week, one course at a time over 3 weeks. So how do you do something in there? So Sue, do you just want to mention anything about what you're wrestling with, and maybe?
I don't know where to start. Yeah. So, right. So I'm more in STEM in the IT field, and I guess maybe I can pull out who the players are. So we have a course on the books that we're designing. Okay. I'm designing and it's called Applied IT. What is it called? Applied IT Sustainability, with learning outcomes that were purposefully written. I can actually share parts of this if that would help. Parts of what I sent to Scott. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Sure. Yeah, please do.
All right. So I can just show them to you because it's going to be probably a lot to take in if you aren't sure of the terminology. But here are the learning outcomes. The first one is identify opportunities to mitigate challenges connected to the life cycle of IT products and infrastructure. So that's any electronic device you have that connects to an internet. I'm sure everyone has one within an arm's length reach, if not 2 or 3. It's the network, it's the data centers, it's how all of your data gets processed. It's a huge worldwide network, essentially. Okay, so that's one of them. The second one is apply life cycle assessment. Integrated bottom line, that's like triple bottom line, but the theories include some other pieces. But basically, it's those people, planet, profit, that 3. So that triangle for sustainability, essentially, that a lot of people use. So life cycle assessment, integrated bottom line, and other advanced sustainability techniques, which is essentially metrics that are being developed right now, financial metrics, footprint calculator metrics, things like this. Okay. The third one is put the costs in, essentially. Figure out what the costs are over that life cycle based on whatever your organization is trying to do and whatever the organizational goals are as well. And then the fourth one is explain how sustainable thinking can be holistically applied to implement national or international solutions for the IT industry. Now, even within these learner outcomes, there's, in my mind, conflict on how to approach them, because a lot of people, for number 3, the organizational goal, often by law, is to increase profits for your owners, period. That's what you do. There are a few organizations who have, just as an example, Costco, basically they went through a whole legal proceeding that said, no, our mission is this, therefore we are going to center our human relations and human resources first. That's just one example. You can go look it up if you like. So whereas number 4 is trying to get more at how can we decrease electronic waste? How can we help with all the waste that's associated with all of our IT needs, essentially. Okay, so the first course is really more of a planning course, just to try to get the students access to all these tools. And they'll also have some prereqs are like a basic finance course, a basic sustainability course, and a basic, what was my last one? Data analysis course.
So, Susan, just to cut to the chase. The challenge you're having is that in this 10-week, and the way you've outlined it so far, there's not really a clear way to do social action.
Right.
So part of the question is it, and you can't really change much of that because you've got to teach this.
Right.
So it's a thought that this will lead to a second course or some, you talked a little bit about trying to raise some money for internships.
Yeah, well, so the reason I was going on for forever, I can keep it short and simple. Yeah. We have to cover everything in 10 weeks. Yeah, that's it right there. The challenge is we also have a board made up of industry stakeholders who are still learning about social action. And the vocabulary is going to be a little bit strange to them in a similar way that Scott is saying that, when you're working with the provost and other folks, that can get a little dodgy with the different stakeholder perspectives. But the idea is that they can help somehow. They can help each other if we can all kind of get along. So that's one piece of it, and the second piece of it is then how is there a way to integrate a second class that would be like a Go class that can capitalize? Sorry, I sound like a business person. I apologize. Capitalize on these valuable assets that we have either in industry or nonprofits who understand the need to start addressing these issues system-wide.
Yeah.
My question is, can you do something like on the 4, like I can start thinking, just as Miriam at College in New Jersey, if you look at the campaigns that she's put up for the dialogue, they're all local on the campus. Like, what can the campus do to meet, food sustainability? So there's, how to have, where are they buying their food, for their, where they're eating, what else, are they buying organic? These kind of questions, as well as recycling programs for their schools. So they're doing that, but that doesn't mean, I would never discourage people to do a national thing or an international. And I think as we ramp up, as there are more professors like you who are teaching this class, you could all start thinking about how you could do some national things together. But, so I think there's a both and, like, you can dream big on the national, but usually a national campaign is going to take, it takes a lot of power, because I've been involved in national campaigns with students, and it's multi-year. So it gets into those. And so what can you do locally, maybe to start, and then start to build for that longer term as social action becomes mainstreamed on other campuses too, I think. So that's what's in my head. What other people think?
Well, Courtney, talk for a second about what you're wrestling with. Because you're almost, you have a 3-week course.
Yes, so at Guilford, we have a 3-week course and then a 12-week course in the fall. And then in the spring, we have a 12-week course and then a 3-week course. So I'll be going out on maternity leave around spring break. So we couldn't do the 12-week course, but I was going to try to come back in May and teach with an environmental studies professor. So it's just really difficult. So last week when we were talking, or I guess it might have been 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about, like, in the first week, you need to get the campaign started. I was thinking, like, the first week of a 12-week class is really like the first 2 classes. So it's just really condensed, really fast. So the professor I'm planning with, we've been talking a lot about how do we handle the 3-week? Do we teach about social action? Do we teach about climate change? And then offer ourselves throughout the summer or the next fall to help with the campaign? Do we teach it and hope they take up their own campaign? So And then someone had the idea earlier, like, do you teach a second class? So the 3-week class is just a really interesting Guilford College nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to accomplish much in 3 weeks on the action side. Even 3.5 months is challenging. It can be done, but challenging. Frank, do you want to add anything? Because you raised your hand about using that form. Is Frank here?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, it took me a second to find the mute button.
No problem, because I only can see like 5 on my screen, so I'm like, I can't see Frank, but now I can see you.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I have a touch screen on my laptop, so I'm kind of used to like doing that. And then now I have to do the mouse and like, yeah. So yeah, for me, kind of going through this exercise of starting to create the syllabus, I feel like I'm weighted down by my previous syllabus, right? And so I'm trying to integrate as much of that and then all the new and cool social action stuff I'm learning. And they're at times at odds, right? And so I'm trying to balance that as best as possible. But I think there are some assignments, there are some like previous pedagogical techniques that I can to utilize to help students and myself, right, learn and achieve our campaigns and allow them to express the ways in which they want to facilitate their social action. So I thought it was a good exercise, and of course it's a rough draft and there's a lot of more time and effort that needs to go into it, but it really helped me to begin to like turn the wheels and see like, what is it really going to look like? And then kind of like what you've been prodding us, Scott, in the reading is like the day to day, right? The class sessions, like what are those really going to achieve? And then what can we do to make sure that students are getting the right resources? So yeah, it helps us think about the readings, the activities, videos. One thing that I haven't mentioned before is I often have guest speakers come in the class. And this is great on a variety of reasons. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this one, and a lot of us do this, but it kind of breaks up, right? The monotony, right? They get tired of hearing from us, but then also it's like that fresh perspective. So I think having students come in is a different dynamic, right? And it's something that they really, really can be able to center their experiences with someone that's relatable. And so I do this in the readings, right? I said, oh yeah, Ella Baker, was this age, and, Etta B. Wells was this age, and, we can make those connections, and they're as old as you, and, but like you kind of do that thing, but it's different when they can get that very real, tangible, voice that someone from their own peer group. So that's something I would like to begin to integrate. And that was one of the bullet points on the template. It was like this, let me see, I have it here. Notes on presentation and discussion. So yeah, I think video clips and documentaries are important and I utilize those, but then I would also like to have some guest speakers and particularly students. So I'm looking forward to this Sunday to hear some student stories. Yeah. Are they going to be recorded? Is the conference?
Yeah. I'll record it. We'll get their permission to record it, and we'll post it up in this webinar series. We'll post it in the larger social action group as well. I'm excited too, and I think if we, I mean, it doesn't really matter how well it goes because we'll just keep trying until we get good at it. But it's just the first 3 schools we've reached out to. But Andy and you guys, as you start teaching this stuff in the coming semesters, try to grow that. Did anybody else want to share just their first stabs at looking at their syllabus?
Great.
Okay.
So Akila is.
I think Andy was going to say something, and then Sue. Yeah.
I don't know how to do this because I'm not used to attaching documents to a chat. But on our website is a thing I wrote some time ago for our sites, which is basically getting you before the syllabus, taking you through a thinking process of why you want to teach this course, what particular impact you want to have, most importantly, what you think your students have already learned that's related to this course that you're going to be teaching. It's a whole series of things like that, which I think help you decide what you want to have accomplish in your course, your learning goals, and what kind of things you want to have in the syllabus. So I do not know. I'm no good at attaching a document. I don't know how to do that.
I'll tell you real quick. In that little window where you type things, to the far right, there's 3 dots.
I saw.
And there's
yeah.
also a little image of a, you hit your computer and then you find it that way.
Actually, I've got,
If you email it to me, Andy, I'll put it up.
okay, I'll send to you.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
good. Okay, Sue?
Thanks. Yeah, what Andy was just saying makes a lot of sense. I'm struggling with that too. What is the one thing you prioritize when you've got a huge, immense system out there that, I mean, what do you prioritize? That is something I'm struggling with a lot.
Action.
We'll see.
Action's what you have to do. It's like, to me, like, if we're not doing like strategy and tactics, building power, campaign kickoff, then we're not doing kind of this model of social action, because this is based in students getting a chance to act and to build power. So I would say that's where, if you're going to spend energy, I mean, if it's going to be social action, that's where I think we have to put our energy into. So that's my response. And Frank, I wanted to say to you, I've let my students have appeared to other classes, and I'm sure they'll come, you know, if you email me, any student that you think is interesting, let me know and I'll reach out to them and say, hey, you want to talk to this class? And all my students are like, sure, I'll do that. So please do that. And for all the other, and for the staff and the faculty, let me know. I'm going into Venice's class on Saturday to speak about, because she wants me to speak to her students, and I'm glad to do that. So just use us as a resource, whether it's the students that have come through already, or, you know, through social action, or as well as the, you know, me as a resource for the faculty. And I'm sure Miriam and Kent would be willing to do it too.
Yeah.
Who are actually been teaching now 3 or 4 times. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to spend a little time on the portfolio and how are you thinking about the portfolio? I wanted just to go here and just watch, you know, I'm not to repeat anything, but just to say, look, I'm going to share my screen. How do I share it? If I go down here, if I hit share and just click here, so you all see this. So this is the video of me. Unfortunately, I'm sorry you have to see me again speaking, but I'm talking about the portfolio here. And I think it's, you know, all kind of the teaching, whether you get it 3 different ways. You can see how the students in the change book is the expectation of what I'm hoping they get. You can get it from the change faculty guide, or you can watch these videos, or you could do them all. But I wanted just to highlight just a 30-second clip of me talking, and just to remind people it's available here, but to talk about how the portfolio works and why I think, you know, this whole idea of this Freirean action and reflection piece is critical to I think the critical thinking part of what we're doing. So let me just show this 30-second piece.
You see, they're grappling with the text, relating it to themselves, and then importantly, connecting it to their campaign and to other campaigns. She connects it on the second page. Temblador, class of 11, Christopher Temblador spoke on the importance of leveraging collective power by building alliances. Now she's taking knowledge that other students have had, not Martin Luther King, which is nice on some level, important on some level, but here's another student educating her about how to use power and how to build power. They're taking knowledge, applying it to their campaign, and ultimately driving it towards how they can use this knowledge to get the target to say yes, because that's the ultimate goal, to get the target to say yes. So how can they use the new knowledge to move forward their campaign with the ultimate goal of winning?
So I just want to stop there and say, that's what makes this different. And going back to, you know, Sue, like when you're thinking about what, like they're acting, and then they're having concepts they're thinking about, and instead of just learning the concepts and spewing them back to the professor, they're taking those concepts, explaining them, and then driving it toward their campaign to say, how is this knowledge going to help us move the campaign forward? And I think that's you know, we could do this in a variety of settings or variety of activities. I settled on the portfolio, but you all need to think about how are you going to do that kind of action and reflection piece and include it into the structure of evaluation. So any thoughts about that? Because that's what I want to turn to our thinking now. What thoughts about like this portfolio idea? Are you thinking about doing that? I lifted a ton of questions, probably too many questions for all of us to even look at right now, but all these questions that are in, you know, the reading from last night on the research, which we can talk about, that I lay out. but it's with the point of moving the campaign forward. So what are your thoughts about that? I crushed it. There's no response.
Will everybody be using a portfolio approach?
I can answer, but I don't want to, talk.
Good, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking that would be a great idea. I would like to, though I'm still struggling with the balance on how much individual versus how much portfolio, but
I'm sorry, you said how much individual?
individual grading versus portfolio grading, or is the portfolio individual?
Okay, so there's I'd say 80% of it's individual. I'm having them respond. They can talk about it as a group and having them respond. However, with the research, I did allow, if there were 2 students working on it, I allowed 2 students to form a team on, let's say, the historical analysis. But I generally don't do that. I generally make it individual. The group presentation is different at the end of the class, but this is most of it because I want to get at what they're learning, right? Other thoughts about Frank or Steve? You're going to do. You're using it.
I think it's essential for evaluation, student evaluation, and to, as you said, to keep the students on track to make sure they're doing the work.
Yeah,
they're being involved. And how else are you going to grade them? I think those portfolios are essential for grading.
And they see it's different than just a test. They get it by the end. They see like this is actually getting at like this is something useful. Not that a test can't be useful, but they see it as more useful, And it forgives. Besides, if they're really learning anything, you learn a ton about what how much work they are doing because it's evident if they're not doing a lot of work. And you can intervene. I do it the first third, the second third, and the end. So you can intervene at these various points to get them to do, say it's got to be more, or you can learn that the group dynamic is either going well or not, because they'll tell you in the portfolio.
Yeah, I was really struck by how many different purposes the portfolio had. It wasn't just grading. It was, it wasn't just integrating theory or concepts and the actions. It had all these other benefits, and that's what really struck me. And then I think you said, I asked this question in one of the early meetings, that students actually are proud of that document because by the time it's done, it's quite long, right?
Right.
It's like a diary. You write a little bit every day, and after 60 days, you got 60 pages,
And then a lot of times they can then use it, like their historical analysis goes into the campaign notebook. So it's then usable.
Yeah.
For their campaign and for the kind of larger vision of what they're, because a lot of times they can't finish in 3.5 months. So they're already planning now and then it gets to recruitment because they're actually out recruiting for students for their campaigns to join the class. So it actually helps build some energy even going into the next semester.
Yeah.
I now have a question.
Yep.
I don't know if I've missed it or it hasn't been presented yet. How are we going to grade this project? I'm going to do it as a project or the course. I assume we're going to have criteria in advance in the syllabus. It says, this is how it's going to be graded. And this is the breakdown.
So I have mine. You can look on my syllabus that I put up is there, and I have criteria. What's an A, B, C, D, and E. So you can see that. And it's that way for not only it's for every assignment that I give. So I give a portfolio assignment. Then there are the quizzes. And why I do the quizzes is that my students, as your students, Steve and Frank, they're very busy. And they will not read, particularly on a class that they think is in the beginning kind of a fun class and not really academic. And I'm trying to say it is academic, that the quizzes, and I'll just let you know, like out of the 20 plus, students that took the quiz, over half got straight A's. And that wasn't the way it was in the beginning because they just didn't do the reading. So now they're all, the vast majority are doing the reading every time. And so I think that's 20% right there, 40% for the portfolios. And then I do this group projects where they present at the end with a campaign notebook, and that's the rest for me. So this valuation, point, or this evaluation key is piece is key to, I think one, evaluate them correctly, but also to, show them that it's, that this kind of learning is actually, better for them. that they're going to get more out of it. And by the end, they actually see it. It's pretty clear. Any other questions about evaluations or thoughts about your evaluation?
In tying action to potentially the portfolio, and if the topics are novel enough, which in some cases they might be potentially from in my course, would publishing that be considered action
Well, that's we have
in
a
your
long-
mind?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this because we use the word action a lot. So for me, the word action is that the target, the decision maker, whoever's got the decision about this topic, feels that the solution that's being offered by, in this case, the students, is that they are aware of that, and there's energy coming toward the target, the decision maker, to make that decision. So it could be part of the action, I think, absolutely. But then there would be a meeting with the decision maker, whoever that decision maker was, to present it and to put energy toward the decision maker. And as I always say, you start off with low energy, but you can move to higher energy as the campaign goes along.
I'm just going to step in here and move us along, because we got 3 topics we want to cover. And Scott, I'll go ahead and share the screen.
Yeah, please.
So you can, but in the book and a little bit in the video, I kept out all the talk of the walking tour that Scott does, but we spent a little time. And if you can get into the mural board, I'll put the link up again. You might enjoy going in on your own and really zeroing in. We have the walking tour, some photographs from the way Scott does it. And maybe Scott, you could talk a little bit about it, but we found this is this Google map where you can really see the campus. Scott, your building is, I forget which one of your building. You have a nice office in the corner, you said. Maybe one over these over here.
All right. Yeah, keep going. That one right there.
Yeah.
One over.
One over.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's the one that's right there. You have.
Okay, anyway. So there's 4 stops, but Scott, why don't you just describe this real quick, and I'll navigate around as you go.
Here's the key thing about the walking tour. I just want to say a little bit, it's in the video and everything, but I won't, dwell on it. But the bottom line is, about a third of the way through the class, on class 10, the day they turn in their portfolio, which is kind of a relief to them, we do a walking tour, and we walk the campus and talk about, and it could also be in the community, right around the community. Some people have done that who are teaching social action, but it's to kind of bring the social justice issues right around them and uncover them, to say that they're part of a longer legacy around, working for the betterment of society. And the students love it. They love not being in the class, and we go to 4 spaces. So the first space we go to is right here. That's our main building, Tower Hall, where all those students are. There happens to be a little plaque. The plaque is right here in honor of Edwin Markham, a poet, class of 1872. So talk about this long history. And then I did not know who Edwin Markham. I had read that once until my aunt said, "Hey, do you know?" Or as my wife's aunt said, "Hey, do you know this guy named Edwin Markham? He's really a social justice guy. You should learn about him." I'm like, "Where's that name?" "Oh yeah, I saw it on the side of Tower Hall." Well, I went and learned about him. This guy is unbelievable. And he wrote a poem in the late 19th century that became like the poem that, folks all over the world knew about. And so we talk about him. And interestingly, and this ties to so many things about social justice, they don't put the poem that he's famous for on there. They put a poem they say he's the author of The Man with the Hoe, but they don't say, they put Outwitted on there, another one of his poem, which is very loving and very about forgiveness, not the radical Man with the Hoe, which is kind of a battle cry for the working class to rise up against the oppressors. So it's super interesting. The students really love that. So we're there, we're talking. Then we walk over to Uchida Hall, which is the second place right there. There it is. We walk across campus, it's like 2 minutes. And this building, which is now, it's called the Men's Gymnasium. It looks like a normal building, other than now it's named after a Japanese American person. They know that, but they don't know, this is the place, that's Uchida Hall, or the Men's Gymnasium in 1942. That's where Japanese Americans, almost most of them Americans, and if you go over to the left, where they're told to go and report, even says the Presidio, if you zoom in on there, if you go up a little bit, you'll see a report to San Jose, down a little bit, San Jose State Men's Gymnasium, right there. It says, come to the college and report for internment. So that it's right there where it happens. And this really evokes a strong reaction in the students because there's nothing that says that at all there. And so like, what else is hidden from them? What else do they don't know about? So they really are really moved by this. So then we have that experience. We talk about what they feel about that. Then we walk across campus to number 3, over to the El Paseo de Cesar Chavez. Keep on going right. Going, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got it out of the wrong order.
There you go. We go there. And this was put in my time. I actually helped work on this project with some folks and we have a monument to Cesar Chavez on our campus. He was from San Jose, lived here 9 years, living here, and where his organizing started. San Jose State students in sociology actually connected him to Fred Ross, the great organizer. And he has this, and he would speak on the campus a lot, Cesar Chavez. So this monument is for him and the farm workers. And again, if you zoom in on that, the man with the hoe is there in this image too. And so we talk about the interconnections between the 1870s, 1880s, and then of these 1970s and other farm workers today. The image of Dolores Huerta and of Gandhi are on it. And then it's interesting enough, you go back in the 1969 on the first Earth Day, the students of San Jose out of a class dropped a car into the ground and called the death of the automobile. So students laying on the car, they're all excited as the car got dropped in. There was a brand new Ford car, and there's a big history around this. It got national attention. They walked it. They pushed it from the dealership. They had a dirge, so there was some theater to it. They had priests there, giving its last rites. So there's a lot of really fun tactics that we talk about there. The next image over is the Chicano commencement, which didn't happen right there, but they went to Cesar Chavez's church afterwards, after the Chicano commencement. So we talk about the walkout that these are Chicano students walking out of our graduation in 1968 because of the lack of Mexican-American students in particular on our campus. So again, that history. And then after we have this nice conversation, we walk over to Tommy Smith and John Carlos statue, which is built by the students, put up $300,000 to put this statue here on our campus. And it really is the center place for kind of when the students want to speak. Usually it's there that they're speaking. Sometimes it's Cesar Chavez, but generally here. Those are the students in the social, there they are, the 2 men. Of course, the iconic image on the left, the 2 men on the right when it was put forward, and then when it was unveiled. And then the students, that's at the end of the walking tour. So we talk about the history of Tommy and John and what their legacy has meant. And it takes about an hour and 15 minutes. So what do y'all, as you my question for you all as you think about that is not so much what we do, but what can you uncover on your campus and your community that have to do with issues of racial, social, environmental justice? Now, Frank is lucky and Steve, because they can just use this because they're at San Jose State. But for the rest of y'all, you have to think maybe, what's going on in your communities. Someone asked, did your students know I created it?
So one of the questions is, do you know some of the history on your campus? Every campus has got some history. You just might not notice. You might know it. And in Scott's case, I think you went and talked to some folks in the library or.
Yeah, on that Japanese American, how I heard about that was that I had a Japanese American person that would come into my class. He was Jimmy Yamaichi, who was going to high school on the campus and was told to report there for his family and so at 17 years old, he represented his family in the men's gymnasium. So that was the first time I ever heard about it. Again, it was kind of uncovered. So, and the same with the Edwin Markham. Those are 2 things that I did not know about. So what else? You might not know what they are, but you might have some ideas what they are. Is there anything on that you have an idea on?
I do know a lot of campuses now are looking at their history related to slavery and uncovering lots of stuff. I know when we did this session last year, Berry College had a fascinating story of a partnership with Morehouse. And those students came on campus, but there were protests and there was a whole story there, a whole fantastic narrative, way the president responded and to that ugly incident and to stuff people don't know, but the idea that it's right there is kind of the power of it, that right on your own campus, right in your own neighborhood, right nearby, there's stuff to talk about.
And the students are seeing themselves bigger. I mean, that's the thing, right? Bigger. This struggle is bigger, and that people have been thinking about this on our campus for years and years.
So let's just shift gear. We have these two last topics in the 25 minutes left. One is, and these are the big topics. How are you teaching? In some ways, Sue's class is almost a research project, understanding the questions themselves and the data you have to gather and analysis. And then after that, we'll talk about group dynamics.
So what about research? You read about how I do it, right? I have these top three areas, historical overview, analysis, target analysis, and power map. And then I have these questions that are part of the portfolio that they do. So that's, if you want to just use the text that you're all reading, or hopefully reading, it's on page 42, 43, 44 outlines that. And it occurs, and again, if I had, in a beautiful scenario where I had a year to do this, maybe I would do this first, or not first, but after they decided, I would want the students to know more, but I don't have that much time. Need to start doing their recruitment, their organizational wrap, which creates the need for them to learn this stuff because they realize they need to know more. So it comes at a good time and creates some energy, but it could be criticized, this model, for putting students in a situation where they don't know fully before they're acting. But I hear that. So what do y'all think? What about these three? Is that how you're thinking about them? History, target analysis, power mapping, or is there some other way you're thinking about a student campaign and what kind of research they need?
Well, Andy, I think you might be muted I saw your lips moving. Just so everybody knows, I've had plenty of Zoom calls with Andy, so he knows how to do this.
Yeah, the Zoom calls I do. Yeah, actually, I was not going to add anything at this point. Sorry.
Okay, but Andy, now that we have you in the multi-course curriculum that Learning Partnership is working with, 5 courses, social action being one of them. The research piece fits in there, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll give you a quick answer for people who don't know. We work in community college primarily and in universities. And the basic curriculum is often 5 courses, all of which are related to community organizing and social action. One course is around the issue of individual agency, particularly important for people who've been through a lot of trauma, who therefore have difficulty becoming leaders or organizers. And so it deals with those issues. Then there's a course on community organizing as such. Then there's a course in participatory action research, community-based research, which is really so closely related to organizing. It's just really the issue research side of that, but it's full course. And so if you're interested, on our website, there's a lot of material on the way that we teach participatory research. But basically, it's a lot of it is around specific issues that people are working on, which is very similar to your social action curriculum. And in particular, we try and get people involved in interviewing people with power and decision-making positions regarding the issues they care about. That's very similar to what's done, I think, through Scott and his program. It's just that we have a whole course on it. So it's therefore obviously gets more detail and there's more experiential learning to it. Because our overall purpose is a narrow purpose, which is that we're really trying to develop people who will become community organizers for a career or become community leaders in low-income communities who themselves come out of those communities. And so it's much more targeted as what are the credentials and what are the areas of expertise you have to be an effective organizer or leader.
Yeah. But it's a good example of how a course on a research-based course, community-based research course, can be a good lead-in to a course where students actually then launch campaigns.
Yes.
Right. So they can really get that larger analysis up front and understand the issues from a deeper way, and then move into a course if there was a sequence where they would actually do the kind of stuff that Scott has in his course model.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about it, I've got a book.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that gets out again to the whole group. I'll send a link to that.
There's a whole chapter in there on participatory research and how it's taught at different campuses where we were involved.
Yeah.
With some good examples.
And I think Andy's point is well taken, right? It could be a whole class just on this topic. But if you're going to be doing in a semester, you're going to be doing a campaign, it can only be a part, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So you know, you do what you can do, and you introduce the topics, and hopefully, you know, they go on to do some students are interested in doing the research part where they'll actually go into that area. And we have professors that do participatory action research. They'll take courses in that, which is awesome, right?
Yeah. I think it's really important that you've got the research as part of the introductory course, because if you're going to do this work at all, you've got to learn how serious research is a critical part of being able to have the facts and power that you need to have to make differences.
And they
Interesting. Go ahead, Scott.
I would say they probably already read 5 student reflections by the time they get to class 10. And every one of the students in the reflections, because I have them talk about issue development, group dynamics, research, and they all say, research, that's the most important thing that you're going to do. So they're getting smacked over the head by other students, not just me. They say you really got to focus on your research if you're going to be successful.
And for organizing it, involving leaders from the community in themselves and doing participatory research is the most powerful way that you can get them to be true leaders, have a mastery of the issues they're dealing with.
What I like about that presentation you did, Scott, about the research was they've already defined their campaign. They've already figured out a target and so forth. They're already on the way.
Yep.
So by the time the research stuff comes, they're really hungry for it, because at that point they're out there talking to people and they realize they need better answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other thoughts on this part? Go ahead, Scott.
Any other thoughts? And I have one last thing to say about it, but any other thoughts about the research component? So I'm sorry, if there's no other, we'll talk about the last question, but I wanted to show one thing on my screen, just to show you like how contemporary this is. It just came out at 12 noon. Actually, I was a minute late to us, was that we have a target who's the president of the university. And what's interesting about this, so she's leaving, she's been probably forced to resign by the chancellor because of sexual abuse that occurred on our campus with 23 swimmers. And the question is, did she do enough to protect these swimmers from sexual abuse of a trainer? So she's on her way out. And so the students are trying to get everything done. So all this target analysis has been done on the president, and they've talked to other people in the community to try to figure out how much can they push her to get her to do the right thing before she leaves. So an idea came out is to get an open letter from the clergy rather than jumping on the president and saying, really turn on the heat super high on her, to get a clergy letter written. So this is coming from the clergy of Silicon Valley. There's an organization to the president and the VP of Student Affairs, asking for them to deal with the Student Homeless Alliance's demands. So it's just an example of the students using their target analysis and trying to come up, like what's the best strategy or tactic to move forward. And when this clergy group came to Shaw and said, hey, we'd be interested in writing a letter for you, the students were like, yeah, let's do that. That fits into this general strategy we're thinking about of how to move the president before she leaves on December 15th. And again, the example of the target and a real life example that's going on, as we speak at San Jose State. So our last point. You want to say what it is, Bobby? Because I don't have it up right
So
here.
group dynamics. And there's both teaching it, but also managing it. That's what seems like there was, not just teaching it, it was also helping make it happen.
And I would just say when I heard myself, I was like, I actually forgot like one of the things which was to talk about the group protocols. I don't know if you've heard that, go back and listen to the video on the section on group dynamics. But I talk about like getting the students to come up with some group norms. And I actually forgot to do that with this group. So I need to kind of go back and make sure that happens. But they're all getting along wonderfully. So one of the reasons why I haven't had to deal with it. But I think, I divided in there as kind of three things that they need to deal with group dynamics. One is the basics, like how to facilitate, how to have an agenda, vibes watcher, timekeeper, these basic parts of group dynamics, speaking in I statements. Secondly, how to make decisions, give them a variety of different decision makings. And third, how to have a culture of accountability. So those are the three things that I highlight in the videos and so forth. And just want to hear you all, what are you thinking about when it comes to group dynamics? Are you going to use those ideas, or are you going to, those in addition, you might be doing something else? So I thought it'd be good to hear from you all about what you might be doing. Because you're going to have to deal with group dynamics, because we just had a group, one of my groups fell apart. So it's going to happen.
Well, and some of you, you've all taught. So I'm curious to know if you've had group projects in the past, what your experience has been here. Go ahead, Frank.
I've had experiences in the past teaching outside of the college campus. So me and my wife, we started a free tutoring center for junior high and high school students. And one of the things we implemented was for them to set the ground rules, for them to set the norms, for them to set the expectations. So we had, one of our sessions was dedicated to that. And then we like literally wrote it on a poster board and we hung it up. So it was always there, right? And we always would have to kind of remind them, for example, just something as being respectful or listening to others when things maybe got rowdy, right, with the youth. And we'd have to say, hey, you made these, you agreed upon them, these are what you wanted. So I can imagine something very similar at the collegiate level, but an upgraded version of that, right, where we're kind of agreeing upon a certain set of conduct, and that they also will be the ones that are orchestrating that.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Exactly. I think it's perfect to do that. Anyone else? Brian hasn't spoken, or I just want to make sure everyone gets included. Julie or Rose, they want to say anything in this or anything else that's been talked about today?
Sure, I'll say something. I really like the idea of strategies for facilitation, because I think this is one thing. I have students that are working in groups right now, and it tends to be one group. It seems like the facilitator changes. Like there's somebody new that steps up depending on what they're doing in that particular day. And the other group, it seems to be the same two students that are doing most of the facilitating. And I think in some ways, the other students I've just started to tap into this dynamic feel like their ideas are not as valuable because they are not in that facilitator role. And so I'm struggling with thinking about how to, there's not a ton of time left in my semester, but to introduce some of these basics about just facilitating and how to share those responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I'm here mainly as a surrogate because there are a number of things brewing on campus, but it's a little bit too early to get our faculty engaged here now because of the timing issue. But I'm attending because I want to learn a little bit more about this and be able to share these resources and hopefully some of the archival material that you've presented here. So
tell people where you're at so people know where you're at, Brian.
I'm at Montclair State University, which is in New Jersey, about 15 miles west of Manhattan.
Awesome. So you're close to Miriam. not far. Chicago at College of New Jersey.
Yeah, we've had partnership with them, and of course we're linked through the Bonner network to them as well.
Good stuff. Anyone else? Do you want to say something, Rosa?
No, she just got her booster shot. She's not feeling that great, but she's been listening in. So
Yeah.
it's very
no,
nice to have her, and I'm glad she got her booster shot. We're glad
Yeah,
for
no,
that.
I'm here. It's been a great conversation. I apologize for not participating as much as I usually do. I'm just not feeling all that well. I think I'm running a fever, but it's been a great conversation. And as Andy said, Andy pretty much, kind of laid out the work that we're doing, that we're advancing in the state of California. So no, it's just a great conversation. So I am not teaching a class, but we are working with community colleges to build out the community change career pathway programs. And there's a lot of conversation about what the curriculum should be. So this is very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful.
I wanted to highlight one thing. This is on page 47. It ties a bunch of our things together, right? We're talking about group dynamics and the portfolio, the importance of the portfolio, and then, and Frank's point about like bringing students in. If you just look at this on page 47 on portfolio 6, dealing with group dynamics, and I just graded, 25 of them, so they're in my head. But the first question on most of those portfolios says, what have you learned from previous social action campaigns about group dynamics? And since I've had them to reflect on, at this point, 7 or 8 student campaigns, each one talks about group dynamics. So it's kind of students teaching students. And sometimes it's verbal because I've had them come in over Zoom. And then sometimes in this case, the student reflections. And those are all up on the website. You have access to them. You can use my student reflections, or the hope is eventually that you'll have your students write them. And then they'll be replaced about what it's like to be involved in campaigns on your campuses, and then the student reflections themselves there. So, but that's the question, what have you learned from, and so it just grounds them in student learning and kind of like what have previous students done. And then, I really force them, because they don't want to do it, I force them to, pull out the information about facilitation, about consensus decision-making. So I know they have that. And then I, in the portfolio, drive it toward their campaign. What are they learning about? How can this, are you doing it? Do you have a vibes watcher? Are you rotating the facilitators, for the facilitator every week? And so they'll say yes or no. And then I give a chance. It also serves the purpose of making their campaign better, right? How are they deciding about, making major decisions about the campaign, or minor ones that, that might be able to vote on. So anyway, I think the portfolio is serving all these, as we talked about, these purposes. And I just want to give you one last hit on that. I don't know, Bobby, you have anything else? I think that's what I got.
No, I think there's a lot for folks to absorb, and we know this is in the midst of teaching and lots of other responsibilities. And we felt like, let's just throw it out there as quickly as we can, and then keep refining our material, the support material, the highlight videos from last year, that kind of stuff. And we will be seeking feedback from you on how this was organized and recommendations for how we might do this in the future. We also very strongly encourage everybody who's going to teach a course to take that course plan template and begin to flesh that out, and really share that with Scott and have some conversation about how you might make it work, because it's not easy. If you're not just doing a straight on course, it's very clear you got a lot of stuff to wrestle with. And we're trying to get a lot of folks to do this. We think this is as important as anything that higher ed is trying to do with young people. And we know historically the great things that have happened because students have organized themselves, and we don't lack for challenges. We talk about mainstreaming this approach, and that's a tall order given both the complexity of it, but also the political nature of it. But when it works, and I think this thing will happen Sunday night, which if you can't attend, I'll encourage you to read through it. I think it's gonna be really inspiring, because you look at those flyers right away. They're colorful, they're energetic, they're ambitious, they're varied. And I think, and these are students who didn't know how to do this before this semester started, for the most part. And That's the most exciting part of it. There can be a real transformation both in them as young people in the sense of their own possibilities. And in some cases, they can make real change. And it may take a couple semesters or a couple years even, but particularly the campus changes can really happen. No, that's my little speech for the night. And I'll edit that out when I do the recording because I have that freedom as the editor of the recording. But I really appreciate everybody making it. And lots of people emailed us and said one thing or another was keeping them from coming. Hello, Julie's son. We got to get him going. What age do you think he was? How old are you?
14.
14, perfect age.
Perfect.
Get you started. Nice to meet you. All right.
You might need something from me.
Yeah, a lot of energy. Well, listen, anybody have any final questions or thoughts? Awesome.
Send me.
Rosa, feel better. And we'll see you guys.
No, Sunday night.
Oh, Sunday night, even better.
Yeah, text me if you guys can come, and just that'd be fun. If you can come, text us, and we'd look forward to it. And I think students are super excited about it. Miriam has 14 students. It's unbelievable. And I think College of Jersey has 5. I have 4. So I'm like, come on, y'all. You got to get more. So I'm building. So hopefully we'll have 6 or 7 by the time. So come.